Let's talk styles of play in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I've been, I don't want to say harping on, but talking a lot about lately, but the concept of a session 0 and bringing out what you're going to do and how things are going to go up front. So if you want to see what exists in the Dungeon Master's Guide describing how there are different styles of play and how to figure out how to work that out amongst the party, stay tuned. Are you more of a Chiron or an Astriana, or more of a Bob II or Lord Cupcake from Gumdrop Isle? What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and you'd think I might have been making up those names I just said during that bit. Turns out no, those are all in the Dungeon Master Guide as examples of how different games people play. So let's jump over here. We're in Chapter 1 of the DMG today under Playstyle. So it says, by building a new world or adopting an existing one, creating the key events that launch you into the campaign, you have to decide what kind of campaign you're going to run. What's the right way to run a campaign? Well, honestly, I'll tell you without even looking at it, there is no right way to run a campaign. It might start out one way and transition to another. It might start out super serious, high fantasy, we're going to go take the ring to Mordor, and then it devolves into Adventure Time, right? I don't know. It can go a whole bunch of different ways. In my mind and in my experience, really learn your players and figure out what they want, and then you can cater the game best to the needs that they want to have. Well, that's what it says right there. Consider your players' tastes, your strength as a DM, table rules, type of game you want to run. Describe to the players how you envision the game experience and let them give you input. The game is theirs too. Lay the groundwork early so your players can make informed choices and help maintain the style of the game you want to run. Consider the following 2 exaggerated styles of play. We'll talk about those. But once again, I will say the session 0 concept, right? If you lay out what you want to have, this is what I'm hoping to get out of this game. What are you hoping to get out of this game, players? And then you have the dialogue and you say, how about we land on this? Do we want to do roll for hit points? Do we want to do take the standard? Do we want to roll for stats? Do we want to do point buy? Everybody make a consensus. Everyone's good with this. Do we do an extra feat at first level? How are magic items handled in this world? That kind of stuff. Figure out what rules and tweaks and alterations you want to have to make the campaign the best you want it to be. Maybe you're like, as the DM, you're like, I don't allow this class, or I don't allow this race in my game because I don't like this particular race. I think it's broken. I don't want anybody to play a UNT Pureblood character because of them being OP. Or I don't like, obviously psionics is not a thing in 5th edition really, but I don't like psionics, so psionics are banned. Whatever. You figure that out up front, and then everybody can work their way through character creation and playing through the campaign, knowing these things up front. Changing those stuff on the fly during a campaign can make things funky and turn people off to the idea. So 2 exaggerated campaign styles. Hack and slash. The adventurers kick in the dungeon door, fight the monsters, grab the treasure. This playstyle is straightforward, fun, and exciting, and action-oriented. Players spend relatively little time developing personas for their characters, role-playing out-of-combat situations, or discussing anything other than the immediate dangers of the dungeon. In such a game, the adventurers face clearly evil monsters, and opponents occasionally meet clearly good and helpful NPCs. Don't expect the adventurers to anguish over what to do with prisoners or debate whether it's right or wrong to invade or wipe out a bugbear lair. Don't track money or time spent in town. Once they've completed a task, send the adventurers back into action as quickly as possible. Character motivation needs to be no more developed than a desire to kill monsters and acquire treasure. So, hack and slash is often a term used when it comes to certain video games. So I would akin this to a Gauntlet Legends or even a Diablo 2, You're going out there, you're hack and slash and killing monsters. That's what you do. You come back to town only to sell stuff and craft, and then you just right back into it. You're not going to have any in-depth, it's not a BioWare game, right, where you're going to have a long arcing story and your decisions impact everything. You're just going to go out there, you're going to do what you need to do to get the loot, you're going to come back, you're going to sell it, and you're going to go back out and do it again. The other one I have here is immersive storytelling. Waterdeep is threatened by political turmoil. The adventurers must convince the Masked Lord, the city secret rulers, to resolve their differences, but can only do so after both the characters and the lords have come to terms with different outlooks and agendas. This style of gameplay is deep, complex, and challenging. The focus isn't on combat, but on negotiations, political maneuvering, and character interaction. A whole game session might pass without a single attack roll. In this style of gameplay, the NPCs are as complex and richly detailed as the adventurers, although the focus lies on motivation and personality, not statistics. Expect long digressions from each player about what his or her character does and why. Going to a temple to ask a priest for advice can be as important to an encounter as fighting orcs. Character will sometimes take actions against the player's better judgment because that's what the character, quote, would do. Since combat isn't the focus, game rules take a backseat to character development. Ability check modifiers and skill proficiencies take precedence over combat bonuses. Feel free to change or ignore rules to fit the player's role-playing needs using the advice presented in part 3 of this book. So this one I automatically think of like early seasons of Game of Thrones, where the combat wasn't really a huge focus of things, but the political intrigue was. And, I think it's going to say right down here is something in between, right? A combination of both. So the style of play in most campaigns is sort of a mixture between the two extremes. Plenty of action, but offers storytelling and character development. To maintain the balance, provide a mixture of role-playing encounters and combat experience. Even in a dungeon setting, you can present NPCs that aren't meant to be fought, but rather helped out, negotiated with, or talked to. And then we do see this in certain other games and then popular culture and things like that. Think about your preferred style of play before considering these questions. Are you a fan of realism and gritty consequences, or are you more focused on making the game seem like an action movie? Do you want the game to maintain a sense of medieval fantasy, or you want to explore alternate timelines of modern thinking? Do you want to maintain a serious tone or humor? Even if you're serious, is the action lighthearted or intense? Is bold action key, or do the players need to be thoughtful and cautious? Do you like to plan thoroughly in advance, or do you prefer improvising on the spot? Is the game full of varied D&D elements, or does it center around a theme such as horror? Is the game for all ages, or does it have mature themes? Are you comfortable with moral ambiguity, such as allowing the characters to explore whether the ends justify the means? Or are you happier with straightforward heroic principles, such as justice, sacrifice, and helping the downtrodden? That little section there, it would be a great thing to bring up during a session 0. And let's get everybody's opinion on these following questions. Then I thought this was also interesting because this is something that I hate, because I have players that do this to me all the time. With character names, right? Part of your campaign style has to do with naming characters. It's a good idea to establish ground rules, big for that session 0, with your players at the start of the campaign. In a group consisting of Sithis, Travok, Anastriana, and Chiron, the human fighter named Bob II sticks out, especially when he's identical to Bob I, who was killed by kobolds. If everyone takes a lighthearted approach to names, that's fine. If the group wanted to rather take the characters and their names a little more seriously, urge Bob's player to come up with a more appropriate name. Player character names should match each other in flavor of concept, but they should also match the flavor of your campaign world. So should the non-player characters' names and the places you create. Travok and Chiron don't want to undertake a quest from Lord Cupcake, visit Gumdrop Island, or take down a crazy wizard named Ray. Believe me, I've been there. I tried to do this with a campaign I was running in 3.5, and I had like all these people with really cool, I can't even remember any of their names because they were all like very good fantasy names. But then one of the guys showed up and we're like, okay, everybody go around and introduce your character. So they're going around, and the one gets to the one guy and he's just like, my guy's name is Big Dick Pizza. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, it was an streamed game, it was an offline game amongst friends, but like we had all these people with like carefully crafted, like here's Toron and here's Divok and here's, Osmond and all these people with like fantasy belt names with like backstories, and then Big Dick Pizza. Like, really kind of just immediately tanks the mood and like the serious campaign that you're trying to build. Especially because like it's not like it ends there, because anytime it gets into combat, you have to go, all right, Big Dick Pizza, what are you gonna do? And you're like, there goes my like, everybody giggles, and then like the seriousness of the campaign is gone. I mean, like I said, as that said, it does give you the freedom to switch stuff up and be like, yep. Michael Clark Duncan, that's the name of the guard in the town. He's gonna fight you guys, or you're gonna go to Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Look, there's Dustin Hoffman. Like, I mean, those are all things you can do, but it just things to establish up front. So yeah, I really enjoy this. I'll say I enjoy going back through the Dungeon Master's Guide and pulling out interesting sections and reading them and discussing them with all of you here, because I find it interesting. Because, like I said in one of the other videos, which I don't know what order they're coming out in at this point, but I read the Dungeon Master's Guide once from front cover to cover when it first came out, and I only remember certain parts of it. And this is a fun thing for me to go back and look at it. So let me know in the comments how many times, how has this kind of stuff impacted your game? Have you had the scenario where like everybody, was like, oh, let's do hack and slash, and then one person didn't want to do that? Or have you had, better yet, what's the weirdest like funky player name that the DM allowed the player to have that maybe derailed or adjusted or changed the outcome of the campaign or like the NPC interactions because they were like Bob II or Lord Cupcake from Gumdrop Isle or whatever? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious because I'm sure everybody's got a good story about something like that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.